With all due respect, the story begins in a crappy game. It's not fun, it's unbalanced, it has below average administration, and the difficulty is absurd. The virtual reality game Tower of Trials fits perfectly into that category of garbage. When the game was released, Korean players, who managed to beat content even before the developers expected anyone to, joined the race for completion and kept going for 365 days a year. Even so, 3 years passed, and people started to realize the game was unbeatable. The Portal Guardian was practically invincible. The Arctic temperature would kill anyone instantly. The labyrinth had more than 10,000 square kilometers. It wasn't made to be fun, it was made to torture whoever played it. So, obviously, the game almost went bankrupt after that. But in the end, there were still those professional players who tried at all costs. One of them finally became the first person to clear the Tower of Trials, and this player found it extremely fun. He dedicated 11 years of his life, the only person to dedicate that much time, to finish the game. He even said he should have streamed it. He planned to upload it to YouTube later, probably. Then he received a system message thanking him for playing the game until now. A reboot update was scheduled to happen in 12 hours, so he was told to continue enjoying the game after the update. The player was surprised there would be an update after so long, but it didn't make sense. The game wasn't even profitable for them. But even if the game received an update, he didn't plan to keep playing it. He intended to quit his job as a streamer and YouTuber and find something real. Even though he didn't have a family to support, he was already 27 years old. He couldn't keep living with that crappy salary. He would even stay away from the gym for a while. People had already told him to become a professional fighter, but money was more important to him. So he did another stream, maybe his last one. He was going to tell everyone, but he lost the courage. Then he took another sip of cachaça and thought it would be better to make a post saying he wouldn't stream anymore. The next morning, with a massive hangover headache, he turned on the PC and came across news saying that the Tower of Trials had become reality. When he joined the live stream, it looked like just another scam video, but he began seeing many more streams and videos about it. He realized that it was the exact same symbol of the Tower of Trials from the game. And the system announced that the Tower of Trials had been updated and demanded that they clear the first floor within 90 days. If they failed, humanity would be wiped out. Jinhyeok thought he needed to calm his head. If the Tower of Trials had really become reality, he couldn't waste time like this, so he rushed to get that item that appears at the very beginning. Even if the world might be about to end, he was extremely excited about the idea. Meanwhile, in the central city, complete chaos was unfolding, with people trying to flee as fast as possible. But everyone realized there was nowhere to run. Towers had appeared in other countries too. Yet Jinhyeok simply walked through all the chaos without even paying attention. He went straight for the subway. He remembered that on the Korean server, that place had been selected as an outer zone. There were about 30 in the entire country, and this was the closest one to him. He went to the central underground mall of the subway and entered an event zone, and he wasn't the only one there. The people there clearly played the beginning of Tower of Trials too. Everyone was looking for the same item, especially because it was limited. Then someone approached him saying, "Of course you came, right? You did nothing but play this game, locked up in your room." This was Lee Jong-soo, a streamer with 500,000 subscribers. Not only that, he was the CEO of the company Jinhyeok was part of. He asked if it wasn't time for one of Jin's scheduled streams. Jin said he knew how it was. Dreaming was impossible at a moment like this. He asked Jong-soo what floor he had reached in the game, since they were colleagues. Work, Jinhyeok thought. What the hell does he mean by colleague? His company tricked several streamers into signing contracts that were practically slavery. The more they streamed, the more they lost money, and their voices were silenced by the company's lawyers and executive power. In the end, they all gave up on that career. So Ju asked, how about rewriting a contract for him? Make the terms a little better, huh? But Juk thought the world had changed and simply headbutted Ju to knock out his teeth so he would learn. Jinhyeok thought it felt amazing to headbutt that bastard, and he noticed it was almost time for the items to appear. In front of that fountain, that water feature that sprayed clean water inside the central mall, a huge tree suddenly emerged. It looked like an ancient tree with large, sprawling roots, a 1,000-year-old tree. Jinhyuk realized his memories were correct. The system announced that this was the Mangrove of Greed, and from this mangrove tree sprouted delicious red fruits that permanently increased strength, agility, vitality, and magic. Juk realized there were only 4 fruits in total, so the competition would be brutal. Everyone started climbing the tree, pulling on branches, dragging each other down, doing everything possible to grab those damn fruits. Jongsun told Juk that if they had worked together, neither of them would have problems now. Instead, neither of them would get any fruit. But Juk said, "You don't know anything. It's better if you just keep quiet, okay?" He knew exactly what to do. One person managed to step on the others and reach a fruit, gaining a permanent +3 agility. Juk thought most people didn't even know about the fruit. Those who had played the game a few times would be the ones focusing on it. Then at that moment, the tree grew even larger, knocking everyone off. Jinhyuk was one of the players completely addicted to this game. He would enjoy the most sadistic and twisted part of the process. The tree wasn't just a tree, it was also an enemy that began whipping everyone around with its branches. Jongsun got up to leave, and Jinhyuk asked if he was already giving up. Coward. Ju said obviously he didn't want to die in such a pathetic way. Jinhyuk said the reward was worth it and could only be obtained after eating all the fruits. Juk said he was lying. Jinhyuk then asked why he would still be here if he were lying. Jun actually began to wonder why Jinhyuk hadn't gone after the fruits. So that's why, he thought. He took the opportunity to extract information from this idiot and asked what Juk suggested they do. Juk said they had to dive in head first. If they moved separately, they would become easy targets. They needed to advance from opposite sides. DeHill said he would distract the creature. If either of them hesitated, both would die. So they ran toward the tree, dodging branches. But Jongsu stayed behind on purpose, saying, of course I wouldn't trust him, and Jinhyuk would be his bait. Jinhyuk already expected that guy wouldn't change at all. He deliberately dodged a branch so that it swung directly into Jongsu, wrapping him up and slamming him into the ground. He was about to be consumed by the mangrove tree. And of course Jinhyuk wouldn't help him. Oh, and if he had any problems, he could sue him later with his lawyers. Sure. At the moment Juk regretted everything and cried out he didn't want to die, he was shredded by the tree. Now it was Jin Ryuk's turn to act. He knew the tree's attack pattern perfectly. He dodged at the exact moment needed so the branches tangled themselves together. This lowered the creature's guard, allowing him to finally see the mangrove's core, just like he experienced in the game. He armed himself with a piece of sharpened branch and asked the mangrove tree, "How about we don't cause problems for each other and you hand over the core peacefully, huh?" He knew the mangrove tree was an event monster. Event monsters didn't even give experience, but of course it wouldn't help Jin Ryuk. Instead, it used its vampiric vines ability, the same ones that the roots were ready to drain every drop of blood from his body. Still, he knew the creature's attack pattern, and even though he was injured in the process, he managed to dodge its strikes with a sharp piece of branch. There was no reason to feel fear or panic. He knew exactly what he had to do. No wonder he was the only person to ever finish this game. When he was almost there, the mangrove released sleep butterflies, monsters that spread sleep-inducing pollen as a defense mechanism. Now he had to dodge the tree's attacks while moving closer and holding his breath. Even with all these difficulties, he finally managed to pierce the mangrove's core with the sharpened branch, grab it with all his strength, and extract its power. As he drained the core, the mangrove lost its strength. In the end, the tree withered and died as if it were winter. He had defeated the mangrove of greed. Jin Ryuk could barely believe that the years of excruciating torture he endured in that game were actually helping him now. For the first time, he felt he might not have wasted his life. The system informed him that his achievements had been recorded in the Hall of Fame and asked him to state his player nickname. Jinhyeok had already expected this and said he had no name. It would remain confidential. He refused to give away his information, especially in this chaotic world. The system replied that in the recording of him defeating the creature, his face would be blurred and his voice altered. But he didn't care about any of that now. From the carcass of the mangrove tree, he retrieved a pearl, the tree orb. If each fruit increased attributes by 3, the pearl increased them by 12. And considering that leveling up granted 3 points, this was the equivalent of gaining 4 levels at once. It was definitely a broken item. Nothing had a better cost-benefit ratio than this. After consuming it, he gained 12 attribute points, level 1. At that moment, he was the strongest level 1 in existence. 1 hour later, the video of him defeating the Mangrove of Greed was published. The chat exploded with comments from people in total shock. Most didn't believe it, saying he was lucky or that he cheated. But the doubtful reactions disappeared as soon as the video was uploaded, censored of course. People said he was unbelievably strong, or maybe hacked the game. Meanwhile, on his main account, he was receiving several hefty offers, though Jinhyeok didn't expect such massive attention. Sure, defeating a creature on the first day was impressive, but the mangrove wasn't even that strong. It made sense, though. He was the only person in the entire world who had ever finished the game. Then he received a 1 billion offer. He had lived a life where surviving month to month was difficult. It was common for him to fall behind on rent, and he'd spent countless days trying to gather money for his binge-eating streams. If he had received this offer yesterday, he would have accepted without a second thought. But now, of course, he wouldn't share his information. It was worth far more than 10 billion WS. His greatest advantage at this moment was his monopoly on game knowledge, and he already had his next destination in mind. It was explained that when the game was released, the mana leaking from the Tower of Trials spread across Seoul. The major change was that artifacts from the tower became sacred artifacts. Of course, they were fake, since the legendary artifacts remained inside the tower. They were only replicas. But Jinhyeok wanted one of those replicas, and the place with the most of them was the National Museum of Korea. It was basically a treasure chest filled with countless artifacts that had undergone magical alterations. The problem was that he wouldn't be the only one targeting these replicas. Unlike the mangrove, which appeared in 7 different places around Seoul, there was only one national museum. People from all regions would gather there, and among them, of course, would be the strongest players of the time. When he entered the event area, he noticed it was much quieter than he expected. But once he stepped inside, he saw a charred corpse. Someone had arrived long before him. Jinhyeok realized that people had gotten really smart after just 1 day of the Tower of Trials. They were probably targeting the classical medieval gallery because it had swords, shields, armor, those kinds of relics. But what he wanted was the great map of the Eastern Land. That massive map, now infused with magical energy, contained information about the Tower of Trials. That's why everyone wanted it. It showed where the labyrinths, ruins, and everything else were. Who wouldn't want such an item? Information was the most valuable thing in this world. Even so, the map only had information up to the 10th floor, but that was more than enough to draw everyone's attention. Inside the museum, people were slaughtering each other to obtain the relics. Then a man appeared and said that anyone who moved from that point on would die. Obviously, the others turned against him, saying that threats like that meant nothing in this world anymore. A guy holding a hammer said he would crack his skull open. But the big guy revealed his unique ability, imbuing his fists with stone power. He said the map would be his. Then an elderly man appeared, saying he could not agree with those words. He even introduced himself politely to the rude brute. But the big guy told him to get lost, saying he would stomp on the old man's neck until blood spurted out. Jung-yu replied that the young man's tongue is as sharp as a knife. However, what will be faster, breaking your neck or turning you into charcoal? The old man knew how to use magic, and he summoned a fireball. In a single second, the man who had just been the most intimidating presence in the hall was burning from the inside out and instantly turned to charcoal. He was carbonized in the blink of an eye. Nothing left but a smoking little skeleton. The old man, Un-gyu, said it was the man's own sharp tongue that brought him bad luck. The woman beside him said that his magic was truly strong and that she was glad she had teamed up with him. He asked whether Miss Lee Yuri had already retrieved the items. She told him to leave that to her. That was her job. Of course, she used her unique ability. She placed the small Anubis statue from the museum on the ground and, using dark magic, materialized it into a large and terrifying creature. Yuri declared that anyone who moved from that moment on would die. Good. Now we can all work together. The people in the museum, who were being threatened non-stop, muttered that everyone there was a tryhard. They gave up. They abandoned the map, the items, everything, and ran away to avoid dying. But one person kept moving. Jinhyeok casually walked through the hall as if nothing was happening. He went straight to the map, picked it up, and said, "At least it wasn't torn." Then he turned to leave. Yuri asked the fearless man whether he thought she was joking, then ordered her dog to get him. When the massive Anubis lunged forward with its Kopish spear, Jinhyeok simply redirected the weapon's trajectory with his bare hands. The trail of destruction the spear left behind him was shocking, enough for Yuri to wonder how in the world he managed that. Not just her, everyone was stunned. Jinhyeok thought no one knew his current attributes, which explained their surprise. He asked Yuri what she would do now. Her dog had lost its weapon. She said she had other options. Nervous but determined, she summoned several more Anubis avatars. She had many replica Anubis statues. Now she had an army, one with a spear, another with a sword, another with a shield. Jinhyeok admitted her ability was pretty cool. He realized she was definitely a Tower of Trials player because she was controlling 5 statues at once with such little mana. The old man earlier was clearly experienced. Yuri asked if he thought her power was amusing. Jinhyeok replied, No, not amusing. Like, amusing but below average. You know, she said she didn't like him and that she was done playing around. And he agreed. Yeah, enough playing around. At that moment, he finally used the scroll he had picked up from the floor. He infused mana into the Pine Tiger artifact, the regent of the mountains. He also had a summoning, an enormous... The tiger was imbued with the power of thunder. Even its footsteps made the surroundings tremble. The Anubis statues even growled back at the tiger, and Jinhyeok asked whether a mere jackal like Anubis dared to bare its fangs at the regent of the mountain. What a pity. He then ordered his tiger to devour them all. The Anubis statues tried to fight back, but they didn't stand a chance. The pine tiger tore through them as if they were sheets of paper, biting their necks and killing each one. Yuri was completely desperate. She knew there were countless ways to use an artifact, but she had never heard of this method. She trembled in fear before the great beast. She simply fell to her knees with tears streaming down her face, wondering who the hell this man was. When Jinhyeok approached with calm steps, he ordered her to hand over the mask of Tutankhamun. She said it was useless in Korea anyway, so why did he want it? Jinhyeok called his tiger, which was threatening her up close, ready to tear her face off. She gave in and handed over the mask. Ryuk thought that with this, he had acquired a second artifact. Yuri asked whether he was taking the map too, and Jinhyeok said she didn't need to worry about that. He then ordered the pine tiger to stay behind and guard the people in the area. The tiger stood watch while everyone trembled in fear. Now he had everything he needed to leave and obtain the strongest ability in the Tower of Trials. The old man, Jong-woo, wondered what had happened to Yuri and why this boy was at his side. What had he done to get past her? Both of them now stood before a large rank 1 barrier, and the old man said he had never seen this barrier before. No physical or magical attack would work on it. But of course, the almighty Jinhyeok knew exactly what to do. To pass through this type of barrier, there was a single point where the flow of mana diverged. There had to be a keyword to enter. He detected the keyword Karpo. He told the old man he could pass, but there was one condition. The old man had to continuously use his fire magic to weaken the barrier. He needed him to maintain it long enough for him to enter, grab the artifacts, and return. Jung-gu asked if he was seriously supposed to stay there using his mana, while Jinryuk went inside and collected all the artifacts for himself. Ryuk knew the old man couldn't maintain a powerful magic for long enough to weaken the barrier without trusting him. It was the only way. He'd get the artifacts and bring them back to the old man. Simple as that. Dawn was approaching, and they couldn't leave empty-handed. Jong-woo thought this would be the worst scenario, leaving with nothing. He asked if Ryuk promised to return the map. Ryuk confirmed, saying he didn't want to make an enemy out of someone with such high-level abilities. The old man agreed and said he would trust him just this once. He then unleashed his fire magic onto the barrier, weakening it. Jinryuk used the keyword Karpo and passed through.